I have been writing for about 17 years, since 2008. And this one is a book of short stories.
David Walliams is one of the most famous entertainers in Britain, known to millions for his comedy, his books, and his role as a judge on Britain's Got Talent. But behind the laughter and the colorful personality was a boy who carried pain from a very young age, pain that shaped his entire life. David was born David Edward Williams on August 20th, 1971, in London, England. He grew up in Banstead, Surrey with his parents, Peter and Kathleen. His father worked as a London transport engineer, and his mother was a laboratory technician. From the outside, his childhood seemed fairly normal, but inside, young David struggled with feelings that he didn't always understand. He often felt different from other children. He was sensitive, quiet, and easily hurt by the teasing and bullying he faced at school. These experiences made him withdraw into his own world of imagination, where he could escape the unkindness of the real world. While other boys loved rough sports or showing off confidence, David felt more comfortable telling stories, acting, and entertaining his classmates. Even as a child, he wanted to make people laugh, but deep down, he was also searching for a way to hide his sadness. At the age of 7, David faced something that no child should ever experience. Overcome with loneliness and pain, he attempted to take his own life. For a boy so young, it showed just how heavy his emotions were and how deeply he was hurting. This shocking moment was only the beginning of a long battle with depression and self-doubt. Though he survived that attempt, the feelings never truly went away. They would follow him through his teenage years and well into adulthood. Still, in the middle of this darkness, David found one thing that gave him joy: performance. He loved comedy shows, he loved acting in school plays, and he loved the idea of creating characters who could live in a world far away from his own troubles. He studied drama at the University of Bristol, where he met his future comedy partner, Matt Lucas. Their friendship was the beginning of something extraordinary. Together, they created Little Britain, a sketch show filled with outrageous characters and ridiculous humor. For many, it was hilarious and fresh, but for David, it was also a mask. The louder the laughter grew, the easier it was for him to push away the silent sadness that always seemed to wait for him when the cameras stopped rolling. Little Britain became a huge hit in the early 2000s. Watched by millions and celebrated across the UK, David and Matt became household names, and with fame came money, recognition, and a busy lifestyle. But success is not a cure for pain. Behind closed doors, David's depression worsened. He began to feel trapped in his own mind, unable to escape the thoughts that told him he wasn't good enough, that his life had no meaning, and that his fame was only an illusion covering emptiness inside. He attempted suicide again, this time in his teens, and later again in his 20s. Each time he survived, but the battle was relentless. He once described depression as being like a black cloud that follows you everywhere, blocking out the sunlight no matter how brightly it shines. While the public saw him as a man of confidence, quick wit, and endless energy, those closest to him knew there was another side, a side full of sadness, insecurity, and fear. David's story shows us that no amount of fame or fortune can protect a person from inner struggles. As Little Britain grew in popularity, David and Matt toured the country, released DVDs, and enjoyed enormous success. The show even won awards, and their characters became part of popular culture. Yet even with all this recognition, David admitted later that he often felt numb inside. The cheers of the audience gave him a temporary high, but when the lights went out, he was left with the same emptiness. To make matters worse, the pressures of fame brought new challenges. Tabloid newspapers began to dig into his personal life, speculating about his sexuality, his relationships, and his private world. For someone already struggling with insecurity, this constant attention added even more weight. He often spoke about feeling ashamed of himself, about being unable to love himself in the way he deserved. He tried to hide this pain with humor, with big performances, daring charity stunts like swimming the English Channel and later the River Thames. People admired his courage, but few realized these challenges were also ways of running from his inner demons. As time passed, David found success in another field, writing children's books. His first book, The Boy in the Dress, came out in 2008, and it was a huge hit. Children and parents alike loved his playful stories full of heart and humor. Many compared him to Roald Dahl, one of the greatest children's writers of all time. Over the years, he sold more than 50 million books worldwide, becoming one of the best-selling authors of his generation. His books brought joy to countless young readers, but they also carried a piece of his truth. Stories about outsiders, misfits, and children who felt different echoed his own childhood experiences. Through his writing, David connected with children who, like him, sometimes felt like they didn't belong. In a way, he was speaking directly to the child he once was, lonely, bullied, and misunderstood. Yet again, this creative success could not fully heal his wounds. Depression is not something fame, money, or even artistic achievement can erase. At times, he confessed he felt guilty about being unhappy, as if he didn't deserve to feel that way when he had so much. But mental illness doesn't care about success, and David's story proves this painfully well. On top of his writing and comedy, David also became a judge on Britain's Got Talent, joining Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, and Alicia Dixon on the panel. Millions tuned in every week to watch him joke, tease, and entertain the audience. He even won awards for Best TV Judge. People loved his playful banter with contestants and his lighthearted chemistry with his co-judges. To the public, he seemed full of life, like a man who had it all. But once again, behind the stage lights, things were different. In interviews, David admitted that even during his happiest-looking moments, he often felt empty inside. Depression shadowed every achievement. Fame couldn't fill the hole inside him, and applause couldn't quiet the voice in his head that told him he wasn't good enough. Over the years, he had multiple relationships, including his high-profile marriage to model Laura Stone. For a time, it seemed like he had found stability and happiness. They had a son together, Alfred, whom David adored, but the marriage ended in divorce in 2015, leaving him heartbroken. The pain of losing the family life he had hoped for only deepened his struggles. Looking at David Walliams' journey, we see a man who brought laughter to millions while carrying unimaginable pain in private. His repeated suicide attempts, first as a boy, then as a teenager, and as an adult, show how persistent and powerful depression can be. It is not a weakness, nor is it something a person can simply snap out of. It was a lifelong shadow, one that shaped his personality, his choices, and even his art. He turned his pain into comedy and storytelling, and in doing so, he gave joy to others. But the cost was heavy. What makes his story so heartbreaking is the contrast between his public image and his private suffering. Audiences saw a confident, funny, successful man. Few imagined that behind the mask he often felt hopeless, ashamed, and lost. This duality is something many people with mental illness understand. The ability to appear fine on the outside, while falling apart on the inside. David himself has said that comedy can be a kind of armor, a way to protect oneself by turning pain into laughter. Yet, while it may shield you for a moment, it does not make the pain disappear. In recent years, David has stepped away from the public spotlight more than before. He continues to write, and his books remain beloved by children, but he has also spoken more openly about his struggles. By sharing his truth, he helps reduce the stigma around mental health. His story reminds us that depression does not discriminate. It can touch the life of anyone, no matter how rich, famous, or talented they may be. It also reminds us of the importance of kindness, because we never truly know what someone else is going through. The child who makes jokes in class, the celebrity who seems to have it all, the friend who smiles every day, any one of them could be fighting a battle we cannot see. David Walliams' story is not just about comedy, fame, or books. It is about survival. It is about the quiet strength of a man who kept going, even when life felt unbearable. And it is about the hope that even in darkness, we can find ways to create light for others. As we look back on his life so far, one message stands out. Success does not erase pain, but speaking about it can help. David Walliams' courage to admit his struggles publicly has given others the strength to face their own. His honesty shows that it is okay to not be okay, and that asking for help is not weakness, but bravery. For anyone watching or listening to his story, the takeaway is simple. You are not alone. If someone like David, rich, famous, admired by millions, can feel this kind of pain, then it proves depression is not your fault. And if he can survive it again and again, then perhaps there is hope for all of us. His life is a mix of triumph and tragedy, of laughter and tears, of joy and sadness. And maybe that is what makes him so human. In the end, David Walliams is more than just a comedian, writer, or television star. He is a reminder that every smile might hide a struggle, and that the most important thing we can do for each other is to be kind. To listen, and to never forget that behind the jokes and the laughter, a person's heart may be quietly asking for help. Fame is often seen as the golden prize. To many people, it represents the ultimate dream. Lights flashing, crowds cheering, bank accounts overflowing, and a life filled with endless opportunities. When we look at celebrities on television or in magazines, it is easy to believe that they live in a world completely separate from our own. One where problems fade into the background and sadness rarely enters the picture. Yet the truth is far more complicated, and in many cases far more heartbreaking. Behind the bright smiles, the polished interviews, and the glamorous lifestyles, many stars carry silent battles that the world knows nothing about. Depression, loneliness, and self-doubt are struggles that can follow anyone, no matter how successful they appear. And few stories illustrate this contrast between public joy and private pain better than the story of David Walls. To the outside world, David Walliams is the man of many talents. He is a comedian who has made audiences laugh until their stomachs hurt, a judge who has entertained millions with his quick wit on Britain's Got Talent, and an author who has captured the hearts of children all over the globe with his best-selling books. His face is recognizable, his name is respected, and his work has touched millions. For most people, that would seem like the perfect life, a life anyone would want. But hidden underneath all the fame and success was a reality that was very different. From the time he was a little boy, David carried feelings that were too heavy for a child to carry. These feelings did not vanish as he grew older. Instead, they grew with him, shaping his thoughts, his relationships, his view of himself. When we talk about celebrities, we often forget that they are human beings first. Just like everyone else, they have childhood memories, personal struggles, and moments of weakness. They have insecurities that no amount of applause can cure. They feel heartbreak, disappointment, and fear. The difference is that they often feel forced to hide it. Society tells them to always smile, always be strong, and always look perfect. And so, many of them wear a mask made of laughter, talent, and charm. For David Walliams, that mask was comedy. From a young age, he discovered that if he could make people laugh, they would not see the sadness inside him. They would see a funny boy, a clever performer, or later a famous star. But what the world could not see was that every joke, every character, and every witty comment often came from a place of pain. The story of David Walliams is not only about fame and success, it is also about survival. It is about how a little boy who once felt invisible grew up to become one of the most visible entertainers in Britain. It is about how a man who gave so much happiness to others struggled to find happiness for himself. And it is about how, despite repeated battles with depression and even attempts to end his life, he continued to create, to perform, and to inspire. His journey forces us to ask important questions. What does it really mean to be successful? Is fame truly the answer to happiness? And how can we better understand the hidden battles that so many people face in silence? One reason David's story is so powerful is because it speaks to something universal. Almost everyone has felt at some point that they do not belong. Almost everyone has gone through moments of sadness, loneliness, or despair. While most people do not face the same level of public attention as David did, the emotions are the same. Feeling like an outsider, being judged, struggling to love oneself. These are experiences that many can relate to. When we listen to David's story, we are not just hearing about a celebrity. We're hearing about a human being who experienced feelings that countless others share. This connection is what makes his journey meaningful to audiences everywhere. Another important aspect of his life is how it challenges our understanding of mental health. For years, topics like depression and suicide were whispered about in secret, often treated as shameful or embarrassing. But stories like David's show us that mental health is as real and important as physical health. Just as a person with a broken bone needs treatment, a person with depression needs support. The problem is that many people suffer in silence, afraid of being judged or misunderstood. By speaking about his struggles openly, David gave others permission to do the same. His honesty turned his private pain into a public lesson, one that encourages compassion, understanding, and change. But before we go deeper into his battles, it is important to look at why his success stood out so much in the first place. David did not just become a star by accident. He worked hard, trained as an actor, created groundbreaking comedy, and wrote stories that connected with children across generations. Each step of his career was built on talent, effort, and courage. And yet the irony is that even while the world praised his achievements, he sometimes could not feel proud of himself. Depression has a cruel way of silencing the positive voices around us and making us hear only the negative ones in our own heads. For David, it often felt like no matter how much he achieved, it was never enough. This is something many people with depression understand too well. When we explore David's story, we are really looking at two lives running side by side. On one side is the public life, the successful comedian, the admired judge, the beloved author, the charity hero. On the other side is the private life, the lonely boy, the insecure teenager, the adult who tried more than once to escape his own pain. Both lives existed together, overlapping but never fully merging. The world knew one version of David, but only he knew the other. And that is why his story deserves to be told, because it shows the reality that what we see on the surface is not always the truth. This documentary-style story is not about judgment. It is not about gossip, rumors, or tabloid drama. Instead, it is about empathy. It is about taking a closer look at the man behind the jokes, the books, and the television appearances. It is about honoring the truth of his journey, both the highs and the lows, and recognizing that success does not erase struggle. If anything, it can sometimes make it worse, because the world expects perfection from those it puts on a pedestal. By understanding David's life, we also learn something about ourselves, our society, and the importance of mental health in every corner of life. And so, as we begin to explore the details of his childhood, his career, and his private battles, keep in mind the larger picture. This is not just the story of a celebrity. This is the story of a human being who carried the same fears, the same insecurities, and the same longing for love and acceptance that we all do. His journey reminds us to look beyond the surface, to treat others with kindness, and to remember that behind every smile may be a struggle we cannot see. When people look at celebrities, they often imagine a perfect life. They see the glamorous red carpets, the television appearances, the laughter, and the fortune that seems to follow. From the outside, it looks like a dream that has no cracks. But reality is very different. Behind closed doors, away from the cameras, many famous people live lives filled with doubt, sadness, and battles that no one else sees. It is easy to forget that fame does not protect someone from pain. In fact, it can sometimes make the pain even worse. Because the world expects stars to always look happy, always be confident, and never show weakness. When you think about that pressure, it is no surprise that many comedians and entertainers often struggle in silence. Comedy is a powerful tool, but it can also be a shield. Many comedians throughout history, Robin Williams, Stephen Fry, Tony Hancock, have openly spoken or shown how laughter often hides sadness. They make the world laugh because deep down they know what sadness feels like. They understand pain so deeply that humor becomes their way of escaping it, their way of fighting back against the darkness. David Walliams fits into this tradition. His characters on Little Britain were silly, exaggerated, and outrageous, designed to make people laugh. But behind those performances was a man who, for most of his life, carried heavy emotions that he struggled to control. His story reminds us of something very important. The person making us laugh might be the one who needs help the most. It is also important to talk about mental health openly, because for too long it has been treated as something shameful. Many people have been taught to hide their struggles, to smile when they are hurting, and to keep quiet about their darkest thoughts. This silence has caused so much unnecessary suffering. But when a public figure like David Walliams speaks honestly about his battles with depression and suicide attempts, it creates space for others to do the same. It helps break the stigma, reminding everyone that these struggles do not mean you are weak or broken. They mean you are human. His honesty does not just tell us about his personal journey. It encourages all of us to listen more, to support one another, and to take mental health as seriously as physical health. Another reason David's story matters is because it shows how deeply childhood experiences can shape a person's entire life. When he was young, he was bullied and made to feel different. Those early wounds did not disappear. They stayed with him, influencing how he saw himself, even after he became rich and famous. This is something many people can relate to. The words spoken to us as children, the way we are treated at school, the support or lack of support we get from others, all of these things leave marks that we carry for years. For David, being sensitive, creative, and different from the other boys made him a target. Instead of building his confidence, those experiences planted seeds of self-doubt that grew with him. His later fame may have covered those doubts for a while, but they never fully left. We often imagine that success will heal old wounds. We tell ourselves, if only I had more money, if only I was famous, if only I achieved something big, then I would finally be happy. But David's journey shows us that this is not always true. He reached the heights of success, hit TV shows, best-selling books, awards, and admiration from millions. And yet, the sadness he felt as a boy never truly disappeared. Fame gave him applause, but it could not silence the voice inside his head that told him he was not enough. This truth is difficult but important to accept. External success cannot fix internal pain. Healing requires more than achievements. It requires compassion, support, and often professional help. At the same time, it would be wrong to describe David's life as only dark. His achievements are extraordinary. He's brought joy to millions, encouraged children to read, raised money for charities, and proven himself to be one of the most versatile entertainers of his generation. What makes his story so meaningful is not just the struggle, but also the resilience. Despite the battles he fought inside, he still managed to create, to perform, and to inspire. That resilience is something worth celebrating. It reminds us that even when life feels unbearable, even when the weight of sadness seems too heavy, there is still the possibility of creating light for others, and that is one of the biggest. Lessons from David Walliams' story. Pain and joy can exist together. A person can make the world laugh while crying inside. A person can write happy children's stories while battling dark thoughts. A person can appear strong on the outside, but feel fragile on the inside. Recognizing this truth allows us to be more compassionate. Instead of assuming that someone's life is perfect just because it looks perfect, we learn to look deeper, to listen more carefully, and to show kindness without conditions as we begin this journey into his life. It is important to see it not as gossip or entertainment, but as a reminder of the human condition. Behind the fame, the money, and the recognition is a human being, just like any of us. He's trying to make sense of the world and of himself. David's struggles with depression, his repeated suicide attempts, and his ongoing battle with self-doubt do not take away from his achievements. They make those achievements even more remarkable. Because to keep going, to keep creating, and to keep bringing joy to others while carrying such pain requires immense courage. His life is a mixture of contrasts, laughter and tears, fame and loneliness, success and insecurity. These contrasts make his story not only powerful, but also relatable. Most people, in their own way, live with similar contradictions. We smile while we are hurting. We pretend to be confident when we are unsure. We act strong when we feel weak. By looking at David Walliams' life honestly, we are really holding up a mirror to ourselves and our society. We are reminded that appearances can be deceiving and that behind every smile may be a hidden struggle. So, as we prepare to dive into the details of his childhood, his career and his private battles, Let us carry this perspective with us. This is not just a story about a famous man. It is a story about a human being who lived through pain, who turned that pain into art, who continues to inspire others by speaking his truth. His journey shows us the importance of kindness, the necessity of honesty, and the power of resilience. It challenges us to see beyond the surface and to remember that even in our darkest moments, we are not alone. When you think about the people who make you laugh the most, chances are you imagine them as the happiest people in the room. Laughter feels like the opposite of sadness. So it is natural to assume that those who bring joy to others must live joyful lives themselves. But life often works differently. Many of the world's funniest and most talented entertainers carry the heaviest struggles inside. They understand sadness so deeply that they try to balance it with humor. They make others laugh to cover the fact that in private they may cry. This strange but very real truth is one of the reasons the story of David Walliams is so important. David Walliams is not just another comedian or television personality. He is a man whose work has shaped British entertainment for decades. From his outrageous sketches in Little Britain to his role as a much-loved judge on Britain's Got Talent, to his worldwide success as a children's author, he has left a mark on millions of people. His stories have encouraged kids to read, his comedy has filled homes with laughter, and his personality has become a familiar presence on screens across the UK and beyond. To the public, he seems like someone who has everything: talent, success, and influence. But behind that image is a much more complicated reality, one filled with darkness, depression, and painful moments that began when he was only a boy, the most powerful part of David's journey is the contrast between what the world saw and what he felt inside. Outwardly, he was thriving. Inwardly, he was battling thoughts that nearly cost him his life. And that battle did not happen just once. It followed him through his childhood, his teenage years, and his adult life. This gap between the public image and the private truth is what makes his story not only heartbreaking but also deeply human. It teaches us that we cannot always believe what we see. The smiling face may be hiding tears. The successful career may be covering insecurity. And the person who seems to have it all may actually feel like they have nothing. One reason this story matters to so many people is because it reflects a universal struggle. We live in a world where people are often pressured to look perfect. Social media, television, and magazines show us polished versions of life, but reality is messier. Everyone has battles that outsiders know nothing about. By telling David's story in full, we give voice to those silent struggles, not just his, but also those of millions who experience depression, loneliness, and feelings of not belonging. His journey becomes a mirror, showing us that these issues are not rare. It's not shameful, and not something anyone has to face alone. It is also worth noting how early David's struggles began. For a child as young as 7 to already feel so overwhelmed that he tried to end his life is almost impossible to imagine. Childhood is supposed to be a time of innocence, discovery, and safety. For David, it was instead a time of confusion, pain, and loneliness. That moment marked the beginning of a lifelong battle with his own mind. And while he survived, the scars of that experience stayed with him forever. The fact that he was able to grow up and still bring so much joy to others, despite carrying that weight, makes his achievements even more extraordinary. Yet, extraordinary achievements should not blind us to the truth. Fame is often mistaken for happiness. People assume that once someone makes it, once they are on television, once they have money, once their work is celebrated, their problems must disappear. But David's story proves the opposite. He reached the highest levels of success in multiple fields: comedy, television, literature, and still, depression stayed by his side. The lesson here is simple but vital. Success does not heal emotional wounds. Happiness does not automatically come with fame. Inner battles cannot be silenced by applause. They need understanding, care, and sometimes professional support for viewers and listeners. Hearing this truth may feel surprising, but it can also be comforting. It reminds us that struggling does not mean failing. Even people who look like they have it all can feel broken inside. If someone as talented, creative, and accomplished as David Walliams could feel that way. It shows that depression is not about weakness or lack of gratitude. It is about human vulnerability. And recognizing this vulnerability is the first step toward real healing, not just for him, but for anyone going through similar pain. So before we begin the full story of David Walliams' life, take a moment to think about what this really means. It means that laughter and sadness can live in the same person. It means that fame and loneliness can exist side by side. And it means that the people who seem the strongest may, in fact, need the most kindness. David's journey is one of contrasts, but it is also one of resilience. Despite everything he went through, he continued to work, to create, and to give. That resilience is not just inspiring, it is proof that survival, even in the darkest moments, is possible, and that is why this story is worth telling. It is not just about one man's rise to fame. It is about the hidden battles that fame could not erase. It is about the pain of a child who grew into an entertainer and carried that pain with him. And it is about the reminder that no matter how different our lives may seem on the surface, the struggles we face inside are often more alike than we realize.